All right.
Hi. When you do to just start a new meeting, I can't find where the address is to send to you, so I have to schedule it, and it wants to schedule it on an even like 2 o'clock or something like that. So, but anyway, here we are. By the way, just while I was waiting, I looked through some of my here's never was a Superman, but also not a stupid man. So that's just these are just things. There's one. It's overwhelming. I don't know what is overwhelming. This one's interesting. Prefer my potatoes mashed. Would you prefer my dreams be crushed? Would you like my beat be rushed? Would you like my corpse be dust? Yeah,
That one goes.
that's interesting. Oh, this is my a quote that I came up with. It I wrote down. It's not an idea for a summit. Don't dive in unless the water presents itself.
Mm, it's a good line.
Yeah, that's kind of yeah. Well, and that's why I think it cut off really fast. But I was playing you the opening track of my new album. Did you hear any of that?
Not this time. I know when we finished last time, I got like 20 seconds of it, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to hear a bit more
Yeah,
of
for
that.
sure.
Okay, let me let's see here. What am I? Who am I? Why am I? Just a second. Take me a second here. I had it all set to go, but then now I don't. Hang on. Album mixes. Oh, and remind me to talk about um, Do Ya.
Yeah, I
Because
love that track.
I love that track too. That's my favorite song of all the ones that Randy and I wrote together. And partly because I get to sing. See, and that's an example where I sang as opposed to screaming. And I felt like I was looking back on it. I would yield to being pushed to try and be a Fred Turner, and Fred Turner is Fred Turner, right?
Right.
And I can't compete on that level. So, so I was things like songs like "Care of Me." I'm just screaming my guts out, and it's just unpleasant, right? I mean, yeah, I can scream, and when I was doing cover tunes growing up, yeah, I could scream. I did a lot of Joe Cocker stuff, right? And I could do that. But when on these originals, I was singing up, going way up high and just screaming. It's like, why? And when I look at the song I mentioned earlier called Invitation, it just isn't pleasant. So when I did it live, I lightened it up. Please accept my invitation. Join me in this celebration. We are friends already, though we've never met before. And so it's a lot, but it's got that feel. I taught that Joe Cocker feel, right? We are friends already, though we've never met before. And I can feel the energy rise, and I came running on the back door. No, that's not the right chord progression, but anyway, you know, it's got enough movement that it doesn't need to be screamed, right? And if it's going to be, when you're inviting someone to a party, you don't scream at them.
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
just felt like I was always being pushed to scream. Whereas Do Ya, I was actually singing, and it's kind of a vocal, whatever you call it, right? It's sort of that's pretty cool. And the only thing on It's About Time, I don't know if you checked out the cover, and I don't, you know, that's a whole other a sore spot with respect to Trooper because we went through this thing with Howard Steele where he was in touch with a think tank, and the brilliant L.A. think tank had decided that because Van Halen had a hit with "You Really Got Me," that another Kinks song would be a hit, and so Howard Steele says, "Oh, you got to do." All day and all the night. That's a Kinks song. That was a hit. Oh, you do that. And it's like, okay, but if we're going to do it, let's make it a Trooper thing and change it up, right?
Right.
But we didn't. We just, it was awful. Well, guess what? In the days of vinyl, you can only do 10 songs before the grooves get too close together and the sound suffers. So that cost me a song. So instead of having a Ludwig tune on the album and actually me getting a little share of the money that comes in or recognition or whatever, or get to express myself, nope. We had all day and all the night, and so the subject of cover tunes, I get a twitch in my, and it's like, why I gotta. But on my own album, it's like, okay, I'm going to do a Ludwig to this. And so I did, what was, the Australian anthem, um, Waltzing Matilda. And how that came about is my parents had given me a bunch of Reader's Digest books. And those are the greatest books if you get hold of them. I've got a bunch of them. And they're just like just a chord chart and like a lead sheet, right, with the lyrics and the melody. And I had one that's children's songs. And I'm going through this thing and I come across Waltzing Matilda, and I just started playing. Instead of playing what was written, I just said, once a jolly swag man can't buy a billabong under the shade of a coolabah tree. And he laughed as he watched and waited till his belly boiled. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. And I sort of started doing it like how Ludwig would do it, right? And I ended up starting in one key, down low. I went up a fourth or a fifth, and then the chorus was way up there. And then for the last verse, I actually came back to the original key, only up an octave. So it's like almost inhuman. I probably couldn't sing it today because it's so difficult, right? But it was just fun. Anyway, so I thought, oh, that's sort of neat to change the chords like that. It's no longer the original Rolf Harris or whatever it was who did the original. It's kind of my song now, and so I threw it into MIDI in the computer and forgot about it. And then about 6 months later, I was cleaning out my computer. It's like, oh, I listened to that. That is very cool. I got to do that, right? So that ended up on the It's About Time album. Now, how did I get on that subject? But
That's
oh yeah,
funny. Does you say that? That makes sense to me because when listened to the album, it said as recorded at the end of that track. It's like uh, waltzing with Matilda, and then as recorded. I was like, what do you mean as recorded on your on the CD case? And so that explains why, because that was your one cover song.
oh no, no, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I can't remember exact wording. Ad recorded, something like that. I mean, covers are only good if you really make them your own. That's why I think Jeff Healey was really good at doing that, including that Spirit song. Jeff Healey was really good at just taking a song and really
Yeah,
bluesing
oh,
it up.
absolutely. Yeah, I have nothing against coverage. As a matter of fact, I got some faves. On my own, I've got a Wurlitzer keyboard. Um, I don't know if you'll hear it. Oh, it's not plugged in. But one of my favorite songs is this one. If you ever change your mind about leaving me behind. Oh, you gotta bring it to me. Bring your sweet loving. Bring it home to me, yeah. 'Cause when a man loves a woman, and I mash the first song, which is whatever it is called, with When a Man Loves a Woman. When a man loves a woman,
Yep.
and back and forth between the two, right? And I'm just having fun, right? But then I'm doing it my way, right?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. So to me, yeah, I don't mind doing covers. I mean, I grew up doing covers in my first bands, right?
Yeah, I don't
Anyway,
mind covers as long as they're. I mean, I don't want a whole album of covers too often, but a cover where a band really brings it to life is cool. But
yeah.
so
Well, as a matter of fact, Bruce Allen managed Crosstown Buzz. And one of the things he was, I don't know if it was him or me, but he said, Frank, how would you feel about doing Janis Joplin songs? And I said, oh, I'd love that. Because, see, when you do a cover tune, people are going, oh, he doesn't sound like, Tinkerbell on that, the original. And it's like, well, but whereas when a guy sings a song that's a hit by a woman, you got free reign, right? So I did Cry Baby. Do you know that song?
I do.
Cry, cry, baby. Only it's way up there. I don't know if I can hit it nowadays, but anyways, so there's a case where I would scream my guts out back in the day, but I could do that. And people go, oh, they know the song, but it's like, whoa, that was something. And I used to like singing, Aretha Franklin songs and stuff like that. So anyway, we got off topic here, didn't we?
Well, we were talking about Round Round We Go, and I mentioned in the Lost video that I was surprised when I found that two of the three top charting singles of the '70s by Trooper you sang lead on.
Yeah.
So there's a Hand Grenade which hit 14, A Moment of His Time, I think it's called,
Oh, a
hit
moment that takes.
14, and then Round Round We Go hit 22. So I mean, two of the three top charting singles of Trooper in the '70s, higher than Raise a Little Hell and some of their bigger radio hits nowadays, were sung by you, which I found really fascinating. I
Well,
know
it was
there
it
has to be
was a
some
co-
politics in that band.
it was a cause of great concern within a certain element of the band, and it finally led to, well, yeah, it's really too bad because I mean, well, I'll give you an example. When Raise a Little Hell was at one point on one side and Round Round We Go on the other, and the heavy rock stations were playing Raise a Little Hell, and it's going up the charts. That's great. And this sort of more middle of the road, or stations were playing Round Round We Go. And we were on tour in the Maritimes, and we're in the motel room, and Ray's doing an interview with a local radio station, and I guess he's got it on speakerphone so we can hear the conversation. And the DJ says, "Oh, you'll be happy to know your song just broke the top 10." And Ray said, "Oh, which one?" And the guy says, "Oh, Round Round We Go." And Ray goes, "Ah, crap," or a similar word. And and because it wasn't his song, right?
Right.
Anyway, so I waited until the interview was over, and I said, Ray, when Two for the Show was zooming up the charts, we didn't go, oh, that's too bad because that's your song and not our songs. I said the band was starting to have some success. I said I'm really distressed at your reaction to the fact that we're going top 10 on Round Round We Go. And of course, he didn't have anything he could say. But that was just another point of, yeah, I'm out of here. I had said, look, why don't we just split everything 5 ways? And oh no, Tommy and Donnie don't do anything. I was like, oh really? I said, for me, when we go into Raise Little Hell, and Tommy does a brap boom boom brap boom boom bam drum fill, that lets the audience know, oh good, they're not just a power ballads, Two for the Show kind of band. They're a rock and roll, here we go, heavy band. And I said, I think that's just as significant, but they wouldn't, no, they wouldn't go for that. And so that was just, it just became, so I said, oh, okay, fine, I'll put my money where my mouth is. And I went to Tommy and Donnie, says, look, anything I write, I'll split 3 ways with you guys. And so we get to go into this, we're going to go into the studio to do Flying Colors. And in the old days, of course, when you get to choose what songs go on the album, Ray and Brian would, of course, choose their own songs, and anyone else would, too bad for you, buddy. And to a point where, on I guess it would be the Thick as Thieves album, this is already going on. Tommy and Donnie came to me and said, Frank, would you sing Moment That It Takes? I said, well, did you ask Ray? And they said, oh, yeah, we asked him, but he said, oh, it'll have a lot more meaning if it's sung by the people that wrote it. That sounds sort of logical, except that it just guarantees that it's never going to see the light of day because it's not sung by the lead singer. Anyway, so when they asked me to sing, I said, oh, okay, fine, I'll sing it. And then we got in the studio. We're at, what was it called in Vancouver? Mushroom Sound. And I had just finished singing the lead on Round Round We Go. And Smitty comes out. He says, so Frank, do you think Moment That It Takes should be on the album? I said, well, yeah. I said, it'd be nice for Donnie and Tommy to have a song on the album. Okay, so he goes back in the studio. Randy Bachman is sitting there, and Ray, and he says, Frank says, Moment That It Takes is on, Fine Mess is off. Now, that wasn't even in the conversation, but Fine Mess was another one of my songs, right? So I mean, it was like, and I mentioned to you the other day, that was the beginning of the end. That was like, wow, You know, you're that, you stoop that low, right? And it's interesting because I still get some people saying, "Oh, I can remember there's a real trooper fan from the States I stay in touch with." He says, "You know, they're talking about maybe putting out a marble colored 50th anniversary thing," and he says, "I've been lobbying to get a fine mess on it, right?" And I was so ticked off they to try and shut me up. They said, "Oh, we'll put it on the B side of Raise Little Hell." So yeah, okay, which it was for about a month, and then it got dumped in favor of having a double-sided one with Round Round We Go.
Mm.
So you know, we're back into the old politics thing, and it's like, wow. But it was a neat song because it was a shuffle. Wait, I mean, it just had a nice bounce to it, right? And that kind of bounce feel was something that Walter Zwolinski used to do quite a bit. It was like, oh, yeah, I'll do something like that. Waiting, waiting on your love. Anyway, so on and that everything triggers something, right? On the It's About Time album, I put a song called "You Ain't Fooling Nobody,"
Yeah.
and that song was actually written in this. I wrote that in the studio in Edmonton when we were doing the Flying Colors album. What's his name? Dave, not David Steele. Howard Steele, the engineer, for some reason I think he's a Nazi, but probably was he was big on Nazi memorabilia or something, and he brought in all these videos, and so on the way into the studio there's a little lounge area, and we come in to record, and I go in the studio and I start kind of nimbling up me fingies, and time's going by, and where's the band? I go back out, and they're all watching a World War II documentary. And it's like, what's going on here, guys? Says, oh, we're just gonna finish it up. We'll be in a minute. So, and of course, at this point, I pretty much decided I wanted to get out of Dodge. I wanted to quit the band. So I just wanted to get the album done and go home. You know, I miss my family. So anyway, so I went in there, and it was like, it was basically, I've heard all of your lies before. You ain't fooling nobody anymore. That was actually just written, and I wrote the whole thing right out in about 5 minutes. Hey there, great. Oh, and there's some weird rhymes. Hey there, great conniver. Um, and then each verse started. One was "Hey there, great conniver." The next verse started out, "Hey there, great contriver, cooking up your brew. You serve me on a platter for everyone to view. The something's changed." Anyway, and then of course, "You ain't fooling nobody, so don't come crying around my back door. I've heard all of your lies before. You ain't fooling nobody anymore," right? So that was written just in anger for certain individuals within the band, right? But that wrote itself out of sheer anger. And we actually recorded it. And when we got to Fort Lauderdale, because we recorded Flying Colors in Edmonton, and the band was so fractured at that point. Oh, and Howard Steele had blown through the entire budget because he was incompetent and wasting money watching videos when we were paying for studio time, and so they couldn't afford for the whole band to go to Fort Lauderdale for the mix. So Ray, I guess, realized that if he and I went as the two faction leaders were together in Fort Lauderdale, that one of us would have been fed to the alligators. And he wisely said, "Smitty, you go." And so Smitty and I went to Fort Lauderdale, and that was on the flight where Howard said, "Oh, Frank, you know, if you just do a little cocaine, you'd be a lot less uptight, right?" And I pointed out to him that, well, your indulgences have rendered your ability even to hear something that's out of time, because we had a piece where he had cut and pasted a song, and you know, it's 2-inch tape, right? And puts it all back together, and the band listens to it. And he says, see, not to worry, it's all back together. And all the band thought it was fine. And I said, would you listen to the second line of the second verse? Why? I said, well, there's about a tenth of a beat missing. No, there isn't. I said, well, humor me. There's an idea for a song. Anyway, so they listened to it. Sure enough, it's boom, boom, boom. It's like, whoa. So we had to spend half an hour, and we got we're all standing there like this with bits of 2-inch tape on our arms, picked up off the floor. And Howard's, I think it's this one, and he splices that one in. Eventually, he found it. And anyway, so my reference was, we wouldn't have had to waste an hour while you went searching for a piece of tape that long. And the rest of the trip, 5-hour flight from LA to Lauderdale, was done in silence. But anyway, so we get there, and so the engineers in Criterion Studios in Miami have never heard any of the material. And the engineer that was going to do our mixes, at one point he said to me, he said, "Oh, that song's going to be your first single. That's going to be a hit." And it was "You Ain't Fooling Nobody." Now, interestingly enough, if you look on Flying Colors, will you find "You Don't Come Crying" on the album? No, it didn't even make it on the album. Yeah, that's how diabolical and evil they are, and they're willing to cut their own faces off to spite themselves. It's just like pathetic. So yeah, I was gone shortly thereafter.
That's too bad because that song really has like your version on the solo album has a late '70s vibe to it,
Well, the
bluesy and that.
chorus is kind of Billy Joel-ish, and it's kind of neat because it's and that's something I like to do in my writing. I have a choice of that note there or that. And just sometimes an alteration like that makes the progression a little more interesting. And so I do that a lot. And just on the songwriting subject, I was just relearning. I have a song that's on YouTube that's going to be on the new album, just because I think I refer to it as my wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, because I think it's real Canadiana, and I think it should be part of the lore. And it's basically about small industrial towns and the struggles, challenges, but how they keep their strength. It's called "The Day They Closed the Old Mill Down." So it's on YouTube. But the other day I thought I was going to have to do a benefit, and I thought, oh, I don't have a band right now, so I'll have other than Trooper Hot Shots. By the way, on the song that we listened to, what was it called? Not the Boss of Me.
Best of Times.
Best of Times. That's Ray Roper on guitar, and Ray Roper is the guitar player in our little Trooper Hot Shots. And we're booked to do the Rocket Norton Cancer Benefit again this October. So it's Tommy, Donnie, and Frankie, the 3 original Trooper guys, and Ray and David Wills, who is the lead singer for Stonebolt. So to get them more involved, I got Ray. That's him on the guitar.
Well, that'd be a good group to watch live, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, it is.
Compared to the Trooper band I saw the last year in Saskatoon, where nobody, I don't think anybody's original in that band now.
No, there's nobody. No, and when things were getting a little bit obnoxious with us being shut out of the Toronto Walk of Fame, Donnie, Tommy, and I weren't invited because it was all controlled by their current management, and I eventually made some phone calls, and they eventually gave us our the award that you get, but we weren't invited to the ceremony, and which is we're the guys that wrote the hits, right? And they weren't going to have, and we weren't going to be allowed to play at the Raise Little Hell at the induction into the Music Hall of Fame. So there was all this stupid stuff going on. Um, anyway, at one point I was so angry. I was talking to Tommy and Don. I said, "Look, I think I'm gonna email the management and say, look, if we're allowed to go to the Walk of Fame, I'd be willing to give the band free lessons on how to play the songs because they're close." But when I was doing cover bands in the 60s at the age of 16, we had a lot more dedication to getting it right than these guys do. Now, in fairness, when we got to Calgary, um, the current keyboard player says, "So how do you want to split the duties on keyboards?" And I said, "Oh, I've been told we're not playing. You guys are." And that was still Ray and Brian were still within the band at that point. Um, and to his credit, he said, "Well, I think it would be an honor to get to share the stage with the guy who created the parts that I play every night." And I thought that was really sweet
Yeah.
and decent. And I said, "Oh, this is a decent guy." And so I said, "Well, you got some pretty serious lobbying to do between today and tomorrow." Because that was the first day when we got there. And he succeeded, because I got word the next day for the sound check. "Oh yeah, you and Gogo are gonna be back there." It was pretty funny because when I played in Trooper, we had the keyboard set right up stage left, right at the front, and sideways so people could see all the keys or one way or the other. As soon as they got rid of me or or I got out, my replacement was set up at the back of the band next to the drums, right? It's like, yeah, I see what you're trying to say here. Anyway, so when we get to see the setup in Calgary, of course, the keyboards are backed by the drums, right? So I said, "So Ray," oh, okay, and originally I said, "Well, if we're not playing, what do we do?" And he says, "Oh, there'll be mics all across the front. We'll all it'll be a group sing." Anyway, so we're in the sound check. I said, "So Ray, do you want me to sing on the mic at the front here, or do you want me to sing on the mic back on the keyboards?" And he almost fell on his jaw drop. I think he never thought I'd be reasonable or give the decision to him, right? I think he
Mm.
was expecting a fight, and and he kind of, "Oh, I guess back with Gogo." I said, "Oh, okay." Anyway, so we ended up. I said, "Okay, you play the vamp, and I'll do the little organ licks, and we'll both sing the mic on the mic." So I got to play, but Tommy didn't. And the stupid thing is, uh, there's a place in Raise a Little Hell where I sing up the octave. It's like raise a little hell, raise a little. I won't do it right now. It hurts. Raise a little hell, and Donnie would be raise a little hell, raise a little hell, raise a little hell, and then everybody else would raise a little hell, raise a little hell, raise a little hell, and it's really debatable as to what the melody is, right? And the current lineup don't have anybody that can sing those high notes. But the part of what Trooper was, and this is what I was alluding to earlier, was Ray, strong voice, Donnie, a strong voice, and Frankie up on top, strong voice. And we were a wall of sound, right? So when we broke into a three-part harmony, boom, it was there in your face, right? So the current lineup can't do that. And anyway, so during the performance, they turned my mic off.
Oh, Jesus.
And I think that was so that they would sound like they normally sound, which was everybody going, raise a little hell, raise a little hell, raise a little hell. It sounds awful, right? So when I listened back to that performance, because it was taped for CBC, it's like, ew, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, how pathetic is that? Because, we should have had that big wall of sound and it should have been memorable, but instead it's just like, ooh. And I watched some footage of them I think they call it Casino Rama in Ontario.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, first of all, they look older than us, even though they're about 20 years younger. It's like living a harder life, maybe. and they did the energy. We got 10 minutes. Got another warning. I'm good to go if you want to, or we can resume another
Well, a
day.
couple. Wanted to talk before we head out today about Body Electric, and especially the song "Somewhere in Time." Um, that might be my favorite song of yours when it's all said and done. This by Desperation I just listened to on the on your website, the new version, or not, well, the Rackman version might be right up there because although I love your rock voice, I love symphony and those songs, there's something about Somewhere in Time that just is melodic and yet powerful at the same time. And I think I feel that in all your ballads.
Thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. I kind of feel that way too, and that's what I'm talking about with the stuff with Randy. I was pushing beyond that point, whereas in the Body Electric, I was actually singing as opposed to screaming. And it was interesting. I used to do some jingle work for Little Mountain, and and one time the engineers there who did all the big rock bands, a lot of fine artists. At one point says, "Oh, we love your voice, Frank." I said, "Oh, thank you." He says, when you go up high, your voice naturally does something that we have to, on other singers, use a vocal processor for, and it's called an oral exciter." And they said, "Your voice has a built-in oral exciter in the upper range." And I guess it just boosts a certain midway frequency. And I always thought, oh, it's that annoying sound that my voice has, right? Where I sound like a strangled duck. But I did learn after Round Round We Go is that all those years of doing, I used to do Ray Charles and I would do David Clayton Thomas, who I loved.
Oh, yeah, he's
Both,
awesome.
yeah. So I was more down in that register and kind of a gravelly voice. Um, but when Round Round We Go was well received, and then Moment, I thought, oh, that's now recognizable. So I was for a long time writing every song so that at some point it would go up into that register. And interestingly, Somewhere in Time does that when at the end
Yeah,
it goes up there. And on my new album, I tend to be trying to save myself. I'm singing lower to make it more personable, the songs, a little different approach to it. But all the background harmonies are up in that register. So it was the best of that, the worst. Yeah, I'm still doing that, and I can actually sing that high still, which at my age is kind of a miracle. Although I've learned a different way to do it, and in some ways, sometimes I do something actual harmonic. And the interesting thing is when we were at the thing in Calgary, just because I can and a bit of a show off, when it was. Um, Raise a little hell, raise a little hell. I can't do it today. Raise a little. I went hell, which I'm not a tenor, right? But that's like a high C sharp, right? And I just did it. Raise a little hell, only up the octave, right? And
yeah,
I'm singing like a bird, and that's how I knew that they had turned my mic off. Because when I listened to the mix, it's like, oh, that's not there, right? Because I was
right.
kind of going off a little bit. And so so I can still do that. Not this morning, but but if I have to. But so on the recordings, I'm still singing up, as I say, and I call myself a stretch baritone because I'm working hard for it. When we did Raise a Little Hell in the studio, I had to. They kept saying, we were doing the harmony, and the air guys were all around the mic, about this far away from the mic, set on Omni. And they kept saying, "Oh, I'm doing the A, Frank, back, back." I finally ended up in Mushroom Studios, facing this far away from the wall, about 20 feet from the rest of the band, facing away from them into the wall. And that's how we got the balance correct. Because to get up that high, I had to push that hard and be that loud, right? So I've kind of learned how to do that now without killing myself. Because I always wondered, how do these groups like AC/DC, how do they scream like that night after night, right?
You
And
know,
it's like, I realize it's I'm on the highway to hell. Right, um and I can't, and I need to have a drink. I think maybe that's what they do.
yeah. While you're taking that drink, the last question about Body Electric was the music video. For Stop the Music, because it was so 80s and yet so much fun to watch.
And
And
is
that song's so different than the rest of the album. The rest of the album's more like me rockish. This one's more pop dance. The actual album had quite a variety of sounds, I felt.
Yeah, well, and that was Bob's programming on the synth. Bop, 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 bop. And I actually realized you can actually. It's a pretty neat part, right? That we would play along with. That was programmed, and we'd play along with it. But yeah, it's a neat tune, and I liked it because it was just sort of fun, and I still like my songs. Like I've got a song called "I Want a Bobble Head Doll," and it's actually really serious. The lyrics: "Make your mark, take a stand. Volunteers needed, better lend a hand. Nothing undertaken unless you take it on the chin. Got to keep on fighting if you really want to win. But if the cookie crumbles and your back's against the wall, you want to do something to make your mom and dad proud." Anyway, it's at the end of it all, basically, don't worry about it. I just want a bobblehead doll. And so it's sort of a silly little song. It's like, yeah, oh yeah, no matter if life's scorecard is win, lose, or draw, I'll be buried in my grave with my bobblehead doll. Speaking of which, there you go. Look at this. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
As
Sweet.
part of the promotion for the song, which didn't get up to bat really, because I put it out under the moniker Buck and the Trends, and it was kind of a joke, right?
Yeah.
But I had the whole band, and then things sort of fell through. But I had all these people that I was Buck Trend, and the keyboard player was Bjork Trend, and she had previously been, before she was Bjork Trend, she was Bernie Trend or something like that. So she'd gone through a change, and and then there was all the names started with B. There was, I forget who they were. I started to write a book called The Ballad of Buck and the Trends, and it's just silly. But it was all true stories from the Trooper in previous days, only I fictionalized it, and of course that enabled me to hyperbolize like crazy just for fun, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that song there's a video of that on YouTube called "I Want a Bobblehead Doll."
I have to look that one up.
Yeah, and it's got stop motion. Everything. All my videos are done on a budget of 0. And last year I was able to double the budget. Yeah, 2 times 0 is. Yeah. Anyway, we can do more another day.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, let's first of all, whenever your new album's coming out, let's promote it by doing a session for sure. Because I think let's do our best to get this album out there. I'd love to hear more of it and so forth. Actually, I remember we started this session playing, we're supposed to play Sparks Are Gonna Fly, now that it all comes back.
Yeah. That's and I keep going to play the opening track. I bet you we're going to run out of time. We record how much time do we have? We have a minute and 44. So why don't we go? We'll arrange the time off of here. But why don't I'm going to play this thing. I used to be an angry young man. Now I'm simply furious. I was looking for the master plan. Now I'm merely curious. Screw the world. Heard enough about death and taxes. Don't know much about much, but I know what the facts is. Got my feet on the ground, but the price by the pound never ceases to astound, and the lies still abound. Nothing signified by the fury and the sound. It's no wonder that there's still some achievements to be found. Are you seeing it?
I'm not seeing it, just hearing it.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to share it. Well, the heck with it, because it's a very cool video. Yeah, we'll get it next time.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's really fun, and there's still some life left in me. Almost impossible to sing because there's no place to breathe. It was a little bit like "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel, where it's kind of go, right? But the feel is a guy. Do you ever remember a guy named Lee Michaels?
No.
Hey, hi, hold on, world, it's feeling this way. And I use that feel in a bunch of stuff. So this is Um,